Welcome to those Three Super Bowls podcast. I'm your host, McNuts, and I'm joined this evening by a couple longtime members of the Dallas Cowboys Central Fan Forum. First up is Boozman. Welcome.
How's it going, guys?
That was good. That was
All
good.
right.
How we doing, guys? Hey, next we're joined by the draft guru of the board. Good evening, Simpleton.
How we doing? Thank you. I appreciate that. I wouldn't call myself the draft guru, but I appreciate it.
Just before we get into the draft, I did want to circle back to the off season. This seems like we're almost on a record that just keeps skipping. A dreadful playoff loss, followed by what the hell is going on in free agency. Let a lot of guys go. We ended up losing 6 starters and filled no spots in free agency. How are
We
y'all
filled a,
feeling?
we filled a spot with Kendricks. Come on now.
It was a
Yeah.
spot, but that was
Eh,
that was an injury. So we basically had LVE
true.
retiring. They filled LVE's spot, but if we're looking at the offensive side of the ball, we lost 3 starters: center, left tackle, running back. Looking at defense, 2 DNs, one that has been stout. 7.5 sacks, stout against the run, and actually one of our big performers of special teams, Dorrance Armstrong, and Jonathan Hankins, our big anchor in the middle. Just basically let him go for really nothing, and we actually spent a draft pick trading for him. So we've lost players, and in an instance where we really should have been building the team back in free agency, the team chose to basically do nothing in the name of, I guess, saving money for these big contracts that are apparently on the horizon.
Well, that's true, but I mean, you're talking what we have total of 7 draft picks. You lost what? How many starters? 6? Do the
Six
math.
starters.
Very simple. We can go into how cheap the off season is, but that's pretty much done and gone by now. I mean, the only thing you can concentrate on is the draft. I mean, that's all that's left. I mean, unless you're counting on, I don't know, a bunch of people being cut after the draft or, a whole big fat undrafted free agent class. I mean, literally, there's not enough. There's so many spots on the roster that if you're looking at it, you're not going to fill it with a draft unless you hit on every single pick, and we know that's impossible.
But have you considered the fact that we signed Royce Freeman, or no?
Oh my, yes, I
I
have.
mean, this is just,
And let me
come
tell you
on.
something. It's kind of scary. I mean, we could just, I mean, he could just be that guy that's just gonna just break out.
No, it,
It,
it
it,
it makes no sense.
mm-mm.
It makes sense in a very warped way. I think, in only a way that like could exist within a structure that exists with the Cowboys. I truly think that they are consciously taking a step back, knowing that obviously nobody's jobs are really on the line. I mean, I'm not including McCarthy. I'm talking, front office, whatever. There's just no urgency, and I think they probably rightfully felt that they put together very good rosters over the last 2, maybe 3 years. They kind of finagled some things and fit some contracts in that maybe where they were pushing money out to the future. And I mean, we had obviously a very good roster the last couple of years. We were the 2 seed last year. Probably one of the top 5, 6 teams in the league, and they completely pissed down their leg in the first round of the playoffs. And I think if you're Steven or McClay or whatever, and you know that you're around as long as you want to be around, you're looking at it like, okay, we kind of extended ourselves a little bit the last year or two, traded future picks for guys like Cooks and Gilmore, had really strong rosters, and we see what that's gotten us. So we had these big contracts coming up, and I truly think they are consciously like trying to sort of reset the salary landscape over the next like 2 to 3, maybe 4 years. Probably knowing their roster this year is not quite as good as it has been the last year or two, and I think they're fine with it. I mean, it's insane by most like NFL measures, but I think that's the reality, honestly.
Well, we already know how they're different from every other team. We know this. So The fact they consciously chose to do this, I mean, they don't have to. I
Nope.
mean, they can navigate their way through it if they actually had someone in charge of the cap who, I don't know, wasn't a waiter 20 years ago before he signed on with the Cowboys. I mean, we have Stephen
Yeah.
Jones running around. He has chemical engineering degree, and whoop de doo. The guy we got in charge of the cap, literally, his last job before joining the Cowboys was being a waiter somewhere. You know, he was in tchotchkes. He had flair. I don't know. I don't know how they found him. I don't know why he's still there, but
But
that's how
well,
things happen.
he was also an equipment manager, wasn't he,
Oh
at
yes, that's right.
Arkansas?
That's right.
So I
Yes,
Yeah.
mean, he does
yes,
have
yes.
credentials.
Very
It's
yes. He's
it's
car.
yeah, like a lot of these guys in the NFL, in the front offices or these like
This is a
staffers.
different level of nepotism. Don't even start with me on that.
No,
This is
no,
a
no. I was
totally
just gonna
different.
no, 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 no. I wasn't gonna say like, oh,
Oh, okay.
it's fine,
All
it's
right.
fine.
Just want to
I'm
make
just
sure
saying
you
like,
weren't going to go there.
no, 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 no. It started off with probably little to no any like practical NFL experience, and they got in some like meager entry level whatever, and they kissed the right asses and said the right things, and he went to Arkansas and this and that and the other, and here he is. We know nobody gets fired for the most part with the Cowboys as long as you're like in the family picture, and I'm sure this guy is. And here we are.
He's married to some great grandniece somewhere down the line. Somehow, he is in the portrait somehow.
Yep.
And that's the sad shame about it is that most people think, oh, you're the Dallas Cowboys or Jerry Jones running. No, Jerry Jones not running. He's salting his McGriddle every morning, but he's not.
Yep.
He's not in charge anymore. Steven's in charge.
It
Remember
really
when we all
is.
thought that was going to be a good thing? Oh yeah, he'll hire a GM. Not.
Yeah, it really is. I'll still say I will say this until it could change whatever, but I still prefer how they're run now versus how they were run in like the early 2000s, pre Parcells, whatever, whatever. I mean, for all the faults they have, and it's completely ridiculous. And I have no faith that they actually truly care about winning to the extent that most NFL franchises do. I still prefer this to what it was back then. With that said, I mean, I for me, when it comes to the draft, I'm completely like compartmentalizing it. I've always loved, like the, evaluating talent, the process, the talent that's coming in for the future, etc. And for me, it's like, okay, I'm looking at that. Like, of course, I would like the Cowboys to, get good players and have a good draft, so on and so forth, and evaluating that against the current roster. But like in terms of the bigger picture, like how serious I take the team and like what their performance is, it's hard for me to take it serious because it feels like they don't. You know what I mean? Like for the perception, like you said, of Jerry Jones that he's like this, hard charging, has to win, whatever. Yeah, maybe that was true 20, 30 years ago. At this point, they're just kind of happy to go along to get along. They don't want to. Like, I truly believe that part of this whole weird offseason is at least in part tied to the situation with McCarthy, where Jerry absolutely hates paying coaches that aren't coaching for him when he fires them and having to pay them out a year or two or whatever. He said something to that effect during the combine or Senior Bowl or something. They don't want to rock the boat too much, but they're also, I'm sure, very pissed off with the performance, especially last season in the playoffs, but probably over the last 3 years. They've had very solid rosters, two home games, and one playoff win in 3 years. I am pretty sure this like strategic reset, whatever the hell they're doing, is in part at least due to them probably looking a year ahead and thinking this is probably it for McCarthy. Let's not like put too many eggs in this basket right now that may impact what the next coach wants to do in
Which,
2025 in the future.
which is maddening because on any other team
Yep.
with a GM whose ass is on the line, he's going to be doing everything he can to get the most out of probably the last couple of years of a guy like Demarcus Lawrence, Zach Martin getting close to the end, and then your prime years of generational talents like Micah and maybe to a lesser degree CD, but they're just comfortable with letting a year go by. in the name of being lazy and
Well, the
I guess
whole
keeping
way they've
themselves
handled the
comfortable.
Prescott contract tells you all you need to know. Not only are they lazy, they're inept. That's
Yep.
it. I mean, it's that simple. It's
I
not.
th- I think the Lamb contract is even more an example of it because so with Prescott, I think you could make the argument that they truly are in a little bit of a wait and see. They're willing to let him go after this season. With Lamb, we know they're not letting him go. Like, under no circumstances are they going to let him go. He's a top three receiver in the league. He's 24, 25, whatever he is, homegrown, 88, blah, blah, blah. And we know they're going to extend him. And these idiots are just, it's like shit or get off the pot. And they will not get off the pot. They will not shit. They just sit there doing nothing. And
Well, they let everybody else set the market. Justin Jefferson is due his contract. He's going to get his contract. They can't they are not proactive. They let for
exactly, yep.
other
Right.
teams set the market.
And then
And
they're
then
going
they
to have
sit
to
there
top it.
going, "Oh my God, I have no money. We're poor." No, stop it. Just the whole point is that it's mismanaged. We know this. So, it comes down to the point where we start. That's what we do. We look at the draft every year. Oh, we draft very well. We're a good drafting team. We'll be okay. We'll get about 6 starters out of this class. I mean, it's going to be very difficult.
Our
You
best
don't.
drafts haven't gotten us
Yeah. I
six
mean, no. I
starters,
mean, yeah. I
So,
mean, give me a break. I mean, and this whole notion. I know it's your thing, Simp, about how we draft well. We draft well for what we do. We draft the players that fit what we want to do. Oh, we're going to draft this cornerback from, like named Eric Scott, and we're going to trade a pick for him. But guess what? Oh, well, Dan Quinn's gone. Then maybe Zimmer wants a different kind of cornerback. Now we're stuck with this guy. I mean, think about it. We drafted the whim of coaches. We draft because we have no ability to individual. We don't evaluate talent on our own. Say what you want about McClay and everything else, but if he went to another team, had to run his scouting department, he'd probably be kind of lost.
Well, I think they do not have. I think what you're getting at, I think, is that they do not have an organizational philosophy, particularly
No,
defensively. Offensively, I think
no.
there's a little bit of something there. It's
Eh,
not a lot. It's a little bit of something,
eh,
and I think it's mostly tied to, '90s Cowboys offensive line, and then that kind of like rejuvenated 20 years later, despite the fact that they never drafted an offensive lineman in the first round until Tyron Smith, and then that whole, with Jason Garrett, Tyron Smith, Martin, Frederick. I think that situation kind of like embedded at least something of an organizational philosophy on offense around the offensive line. And of course, I think that's why they're going to go offensive line in the first round in part. But defensively, I mean, I think we talked about this a little bit last year leading up to the draft or even maybe after the draft. There is no organizational philosophy. It's
mm,
completely up to
no.
whatever whoever the defensive coordinator is at the time. It was the same thing with Marinelli. It was the same, they leaned on him way too hard. It was the same thing Monty Kiffin, except going like further back. And yeah, they truly just depend on they do not have like any sort of organization like the Ravens, right? The Ravens, defensive coordinators come and go, but more or less what they're going to prioritize
Mhm.
defensively when they draft.
Well,
With
and the
us,
thing
who knows?
the thing about this year is all of our coaches are on 1 year contracts, right? Not just McCarthy, but didn't Zimmer come in on a one
Yep.
year
Yeah,
contract?
well, yeah, maybe. I think it was two, but it's probably so cheap that Jerry doesn't mind paying that. But you know, you look at it, the coach is a lame duck. The quarterback is a lame duck. The wide receiver is entering a contract year, and they're going to pay him, of course. And then you got your high-priced defensive end that's going to go. You got all these things that are going to happen. Not just the Lamb contract, not just Parsons, and that's the short-sightedness that's frightening. And their inactivity is just paralysis because they act like they're scared to death. They don't know how to negotiate this. They can't deal with that much money going out. We're paying these people too much money. They're cheap. That is the fundamental thing that's becoming very evident.
Yep.
They are cheap. They are about themselves. They're about the brand. They're about the money. They're about the franchise. They're about the family. They're not about the Cowboys and the team winning. They're about the Joneses getting richer or protecting what they have already. I don't know if they're losing money or not, but it sure seems like they have a cash flow problem.
I
They're
mean,
not losing money. They're not losing money, but I do
They're
agree that I think
losing money
it's
somehow. You don't act that way. You don't act like your life is ending and you just got to pinch every penny
no, but
just because a few contracts are coming aboard.
that's Steven's
Every
philosophy,
NFL team
man.
deals with that. That's
That's
what they do.
I agree that they are acting completely cheap, and it's like they're like penny wise and pound foolish, where they're willing to sit on these stupid ass contract situations. Oh, and because they think, oh, we're being like shrewd negotiators, we're gonna save money, and then they always end up paying more. But I don't think I mean, for all I know, they're losing money on these other investments. God only knows. But as far as the Cowboys specifically, the money is locked in for the most part year to year. The stadium sells out. We know that. The TV
So
contracts are
they're
10 years.
greedy. They're just
Yeah,
greedy.
yeah, I
yeah,
think they're great. Yeah, and I think Steven.
Eh,
You remember the whole story, Steven.
I
You
can
know,
deal with
put
that. I can see Steven. Look at his face. Look at his fat face.
you remember? Hey, do you remember
He is
the?
a greedy, greedy person. He consumes a lot of things.
Do you remember the story, obviously, about Dion and the putting him against a wall and all this shit back in 94, 95? Like that to me is a window into Steven's mind, and I truly think that it is just a matter of being cheap for the sake of being cheap, for the sake of quote unquote getting a good deal. And I mean, it's completely insane. And I mean, it really it goes back to the fact that they are not incentivized to win big. They are incentivized. There's enough. They get enough attention, and they're in the media enough just based on their name, no matter what they're doing. But they're only incentivized to be so good, and I don't think that means they don't want to win a championship, but they are not willing to go outside of their comfort zone, and that's what it all comes down to:
hmm
their comfort zone. There's a reason they don't sign free agents. There's a reason they keep all their homegrown players because that is their comfort zone. There's a reason they don't bring in like high profile external guys because that is outside of their comfort zone. There's a way they do things. And I don't think it's about necessarily, oh, they don't have the money to do it. I think they have their comfort zone and they're just not incentivized to go outside of that. And that's really all
it,
there is to it.
it's hard to imagine why they would be cash strapped. So the last 20 years, their franchise, and I know a lot is involved with their franchise, but over the course of the last 20 years, it has multiplied 10 times over. They were worth $923 million in 2004. 923 million. They are now 9.2 billion. It's hard to imagine the most wealthy team in the world cannot go and sign free agents. It just boggles the mind. Anyway, I don't want to get caught up too much in what they didn't do in free agency. Let's move forward with what they're going to do. We need a splash in the draft, no doubt. And I mean, the needs are well documented. In that first round, who knows what can happen by the time they get to number 24. But ooh, what are you feeling? A lot of mocks are kind of leaning a certain way. I'll ask you first, Simp. What are you thinking in this first round?
I think the most interesting question or consideration is what non offensive lineman would make you pass up an offensive lineman at 24. I mean, there's always obviously the possibility of a trade down, and I truly think, depending on the board, that a trade down. I mean, you could say this most years, but a trade down of like 5, 6, 7 picks is probably the best way to go, given that they don't have a fourth or I think even maybe fifth round pick. But if they sit there at 24, what I've thought about the most over the last month or two is who are the players or who are the non-offensive linemen that I would take that would be that are such good prospects and that would stand like be their blinking red light to use Steven's favorite term uh, to make me pass up an offensive line because the offensive line class obviously is deep. I mean, there's at least 8 or 9 guys that I could argue would be worth the 24th pick. Of course, 5, 6, maybe 7 of them might be gone before 24. But who are the guys that you would take at 24 that are not offensive linemen to pass up this like obviously glaring need, given that Tyron's gone, Biotish is gone, etc.
Well, 24, there's no question. If it's not an offensive lineman, it needs to be an end. I don't care about running back because running backs, you can find them anywhere. You better get
Absolutely.
an end because DeMarcus Lawrence is gone. So you better start thinking about that. And if you start getting a wild hair, start thinking about wide receiver like Mitchell, some of the things I've read lately, please don't.
No.
Just be smart. I mean, it's not that hard. And
All
that's
right,
the thing.
Booze,
We make
Booze.
it hard.
Let's play a game. Let's play a game. I'm gonna
Ugh.
name. I'm gonna name prospects, and you tell me. Okay, let's say. Let me lay out even more parameters. Okay. The offensive linemen that are expected to be gone are gone. Alt, Fashanu, Fuaga, Latham.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
well, who I'm forgetting someone in
They'll
here.
all be gone. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I
there's
think,
like 5 or 6 that are gone. I'll say
yeah.
this. Let's just say one of Jackson Powers Johnson or Barton are there. One of the two, not both. Um, let's say Mims and Guyton. So one of the centers, Mims and Guyton, are available. The others are all gone. Brian Thomas Jr., receiver. Do you take him over the offensive lineman?
Probably not. Not that I don't like him,
Yeah.
um, but apparently he's got some diva issues and some other things that. Plus, there's always the LSU receiver thing. It's hit or miss. Either you boom or you bust.
How about if it's
Either you.
him versus Mims? Only Mims or Guyton. Let's say Powers Johnson and Barton are gone. Mims, Guyton, Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that choice at all.
It's a very possible scenario.
I'd probably take Mims just because he's big and he's a freak.
He's a horse.
Guyton, he worries me. I don't see it. I mean, yeah, he'll be okay, but he could very easily be like that. What the kid that what's his name? The Eagles drafted a few years ago.
Dillard.
He ended up just kind of Dillard. He snuck out the back door and ended up signing somewhere a couple weeks ago. I was like, holy crap! I didn't even know that. So that's what's kind of happened there. And then Jordan Morgan. I've been trying to really like him, but I he's okay.
He's a trade down guy for me. I mean, if they took him at 24, I'd be a little bit disappointed. After they trade down and add a third or fourth, they take him. I'm like, okay, I'm not ecstatic, but I'm like, fine.
Well,
Same with the BYU Sumataya. If they take him at
Yeah,
24, it's like, come on. But if they trade
the
down
tw-
a couple
the
picks,
trade down has to happen.
well, trade
It,
down
it,
is everybody wants to trade down, but there's got to be a guy out there who other teams are wanting to trade
well,
up
then you're
for.
hoping
So
that a
what are
Penix or a quarterback or something attractive is there at 24. That's the best way. Now, if there's a big run on quarterbacks and the good offensive linemen are off the boards, yeah, we could be stuck in a bad place. And that's the other thing about it. It's great to say, we could trade down, we could do this. No, we can't because we don't have the relationships across the league.
yeah, got to be able to dance,
We
and
do
we're not that.
no, you actually better be able to pick up the phone and relate to people. Do you think Stephen Jones could pick up the phone and relate to one of these hotshot GMs? No. He's a silver spoon acting all arrogant. No, we're not going to give you that. We'll give you this. No, that's the problem. It always is a problem.
Cowboys are
That's
an
why
island.
that's why the draft is kind of I love it, but it's depressing to me because there's so many things I would do. Yeah, I'm going to be arrogant here. I think I could outclass Stephen Jones any day of the week,
I have said
and his
that
little and his little buddy that runs the salary cap too. And I'm not an accountant.
I have said for years that some sort of, you know, combination of folks from the board, with me included, obviously. I mean, come on, yourself as well. Uh, could do at least as well. I mean, and it would look a lot different, but I think we could. But okay, here's another one. Or I'll put it this way: Jared Verse, is he? You take no matter what. You don't
No,
care who else is there. No.
no, no. Don't like Verse.
How
He's too
about
light. No, you need a strong arm. You need what Lawrence is going to depart with, and what you people think Armstrong had.
I think Verse actually is that he's very good against the run, but that's fine. How about Byron Murphy?
He won't be there.
Well, I'm just that's why that's the game though. Like if someone like that
That's not the
drops,
game. He's not going to be there.
who thought CeeDee Lamb would be there at 17 or whatever it was in
Don't
2020?
start with it. That's
Hey,
the
hey,
thing
hey.
too. That's the other thing that gets us all here. We can draft well. We hope someone good falls in our friggin' laps. We hope someone else is inept enough to let someone drop. I'm to the
Yeah.
point now where I don't even think Barton's going to make it to our spot.
Yeah.
And everybody's saying, "Oh, Barton." Of course, Barton's a great fit, but he won't make it.
you
I
know, the
don't think he's going to
last
make it.
like back in like I'll say maybe around the combine or so, February, maybe early March. Barton, it seemed the consensus was like, fringe first rounder in the 30s or
Yeah,
whatever. And I never really got it. I was like, I mean, if this guy is there, he's one of my top choices no matter what. I still prefer Powers Johnson. I don't really get what all the weirdness around him is about. I mean, I realize like there's some weird health stuff or they this or that. But for me, unless like it's a clear, I mean, well, obviously I don't know the health situation, so I more or less ignore that. Assuming the health is fine, like I'm taking Powers Johnson over Barton. Even though I love Barton, I would be perfectly happy with either one. And honestly, if you're asking me to rank my offensive linemen, I've thought about this quite a bit the last month or two. They would be my top two out of the guys who I think are realistic. I would have Powers Johnson, Barton, then Mims, then probably Guyton, then probably Morgan or whatever if we're just talking offensive line. I might have Frazier in front of Morgan actually, but um, yeah, I mean, I don't know if Barton's going to be there if Powers Johnson drops a little bit for whatever reason, because then Barton is the top center. It'll be interesting.
well, everything out there about Powers Johnson is that he's going to be, probably not first for some reason. And you saw that happen. Creed Humphrey, good
Yeah,
example,
yeah, he's
great
all pro.
center. He was a hog. You could see it. Just the way he acted. Now, some people didn't think he was very cerebral. Now, Barton, he's a smart kid,
Yeah.
so everybody loves him. Then you start looking at some of the grunts like Frazier. He's a good one, very good, but coming off injury.
Hmm.
So you start looking. To me, center is more important than anything else because heaven forbid if we have Blake Hoffman, whatever his name is, out there, that's Phil Costa all over again. If we didn't learn anything from the offensive line, binge went on with Tyron, and then all of a sudden we got Frederick, and then obviously we had Zach. So you have if your core foundation on the team is building offensive line, then you start with center. You can't have a weak center and then hope that everything else. I mean, especially if they're gonna, if Prescott goes away, you're gonna have a young quarterback. You better have a smart center. I mean, that center thing is probably more important than left tackle because you can slide Smith out there. You can plug in Bass at left guard if you want to get through a year or something. But center to me is very, very important. If they don't come out of this draft with a starting center better than me and us, then yeah, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I think I prioritize center over tackle at this point. Just give it's part of that is talent that's available. I just said I'm a big fan of Powers Johnson and Barton. I'm hopeful. They brought Powers Johnson in for a 30 visit. I'm hopeful that he fits the type of guy they would like. He has ideal size, rare size, really, for the position. So we'll see. I mean, I think if they take a tackle, I think their plan A at center would be Bass, misguided potentially. But I think he would be the plan A. Obviously, it would be a competition with Hoffman or whatever. But yeah, I'm extremely interested to see what they target because you could like there are a group of linemen, tackles, and slash potential guards and centers all in the same range. You have the top two centers. You have Frazier, who's probably like a top 40-ish type guy. Then of course the tackles. It's going to be really interesting to see what they prioritize.
Yeah, and then as we get on into the second round at 56, it kind of seems like if offensive line or defensive line, if you get one in the first, you just about have to get the other in the second. No telling how it may shake out, but is the second too early and too rich for the running back?
Yes.
I think it probably is. I mean, it depends on the board, obviously, but I don't think they're going to take a defensive lineman in the second, as much as it's going to annoy me. I think they're going to prioritize linebacker. You just look at their top 30 visit list. I mean, they're clearly prioritizing O line, linebacker, running back. If Cooper or Colson are there, even Peyton Wilson, I'm taking them over Brooks. I don't think there's another running back I would consider in the second aside from Brooks. But yeah, I mean, I think to me Brooks should be like a just like a fail-safe backup. The board is bare. All these other guys we liked are gone. Okay, we'll take Brooks. He's the top running back in the class. Whatever. But if one of those top linebackers are there, if it were me, if one of the DNs were there, I would definitely take them first. I would even consider double dipping at offensive line. Honestly, I know they won't do it, but I would consider that. But Frazier might drop potentially. Beebe, there are these guys that I would take even if we went offensive lineman in the first. I would take them in the second because ultimately these guys aren't even
Mhm.
trying to really win this year. So what the hell's the difference? I mean, we all can see it. They're not seriously trying to win. So draft with the next 2, 3, 4 years in mind. Who cares about you might have a hole at linebacker or this or that or the other, like whatever.
Oh man, it's just so frustrating though, man. When you talk about these first two picks, um, but you almost feel like, damn, that one of them does need to be a trade down, just to pick up an extra pick.
It's all dependent, year to year. Every year you can say it'd be nice to trade down, whatever. I think this year specifically, just because we're missing that fourth, the offensive line class, like the guys who are expected to go between like 20 and 40 are so deep. It's like I think you have Barton, probably Powers Johnson, Mims, Guyton, Morgan, Frazier potentially, Sumataya. That's 7 guys that are going to go in probably about a 20 pick range. So for me, it's something you could say every year, but I think this year in particular, it's just that also, we don't know exactly, obviously, what the team thinks about these players. Like, they may not like Guyton, they may not like Frazier, or whatever, whatever. But like in general, the way the class is kind of stacked, it just makes it like way too obvious. I'll say this: if we do trade down, another guy. I mean, one of the main reasons I would be so comfortable doing it is, aside from the offensive lineman, I love Darius Robinson. I don't think he's a guy that's going to be a 10, 15 sack guy year in and year out necessarily. But given the way our defense has been built the last few years, given the weaknesses, just being light in the ass, not being able to stop the run, you have these 245-pound DNs. Third and 4, you get a draw run on us, and they get a first down. You saw this happen so many times the last 2, 3 years. A guy like Robinson, 6'5", 290, 34-inch arms. He can bull rush from the outside. He can rush on the interior, nickel and dime. Amazing against a run. I think he'd be a really good fit for our specific situation. I mean, he might be someone who doesn't like him might say he's a souped up, like Tyron Crawford or whatever. But I mean, if he's a guy that can give you 6, 7 sacks a year, amazing run defense, interior push, I'd consider him after a trade down for sure.
Yeah, Robinson be a guy that I would consider there. I wouldn't have a problem with him.
And you're considering after a trade down, right?
Yeah, I don't think I would
Of
take him at
course.
24. It's just a little rich, just too much. The guys to me that are no brainers at 24 are probably the top 2 centers, Powers Johnson and Barton. Some of these other guys that we talked about, like I personally think Verse, obviously someone like Murphy, etc. If the board is really bare, like Mims is gone, Guyton is gone, or maybe just like and you don't really like those next tackles, maybe you could talk yourself into a Guyton or something like that. But aside from that, the guys I'm really looking at that I'm hoping fall are the two centers. Aside from that, I'm probably looking to trade down honestly because I just don't see a big difference between Guyton. I think Guyton is better than Sumataya, but Sumataya in a third versus Guyton. Then you could throw in guys like Robinson, so on and so forth, that are possibilities. Frazier, after trading down.
Yeah, but then start thinking about the second round. What then? Then you go linebacker. You pretty much have to.
If it's Cooper or Colson, I would be thrilled. I think they would be arguably the BPAs at that point if either one of them are available. Wilson, health stuff aside, I think could potentially be a BPA player too. Aside from them, I mean, I wouldn't take any of their linebackers in the second, but we know they're going to take
No.
Brooks, so might as well just get used to it now.
Yeah. I mean, that's the worst part about it is that they're going to be predictable on
Yeah.
top of it all. We know what positions they're going to go at in the second round, in the third round. They're going to go linebacker.
They're going to go maybe running back. I mean, they don't have the patience, I don't think, for running back to last. I think Brooks, that's definitely on their palate.
Yeah, the only thing that makes me think twice is the fact that they brought in obviously so many linebackers for 30 visits, Cooper and Colson, two guys who very likely would be at the very top of the BPA list if they're available in the second for us. So I do wonder if it comes down to Cooper versus Brooks, given all the running backs they brought in for 30 visits, guys are going to go in the third and the fourth. Benson, Allen, I think Wright, but if not Wright, the other guys in that tier. I really do
Well,
wonder if they would go linebacker.
yeah, but look at the backs they brought in. It's either feast or famine. Either they
Yeah,
get them early or they get them late. I mean, you're talking about Brooks at the top. Then you got, Braylon Allen. You got Benson.
Vince. Yeah.
And then if you look at they really haven't shown a lot of interest in Corum, I'm sorry. But then, then you start looking at Ray Davis's and Isaiah Davis's, and then Imani Bailey's and Isaac Garendo's, and they get real estimate too, but they get kind of murked around in the fourth, fifth round, and they don't have the pick.
Yeah. Well, and what's a shame is
I
we
mean,
don't have
their
a
fifth
starter.
is basically a sixth. So yeah, so they're telegraphing running back at some point, and it's going to have to be in a premium round unless they trade down, unless they get back in the fourth. Back in the fourth, they can get a guy. They can probably get Allen might even make it there. Third round, second round, that's where you're going to see that little run. In by the third, there won't be a good back available. That'll be it. The fourth, you can pick a guy here and there. Fifth, sixth, seventh, no.
Well, that's a shame. After our third round pick, we don't pick again till the very end of the fifth. So
Yeah, the trade down thing is such a big deal. I mean, it seems so easy to do, but I don't trust them to be able to negotiate it. I really don't. And then
yeah.
you start looking at. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I know it's okay. I do wonder what they if you look at their top 30 visits. No Guyton, no Mims. You have Peppers, Johnson, Barton, Sumataya, Fuaga, Fatanu. Fatanu's going to be gone. Fuaga's going to be gone almost certainly. Um, I really am curious if they would take Guyton or Mims if the top two centers are not there. If one of the top two centers are there, I think they're going to take him. And then it's Sumataya. Like, would they really take him at 24? It's hard to see. That makes me think the fact that he's in there makes me think, as well as Robinson, honestly, makes me think that they're going to consider trading down in the first, especially if neither of those two centers are there. And for all we know, the perception around the league, or the reality rather around the league, might be that Powers Johnson isn't going to go in the top 25, top 30. And they may know we can trade down, and Barton's not there, they're trading down. They may trade down even for less than the value would be. They may trade down 10 slots, 8 slots for just a fourth, just so they could add that extra pick because they know more or less what's going to be there. Morgan. So I really do wonder how they view these other tackles that they've been interested in, supposedly, combine and so forth, but haven't brought in for 30 visits. Morgan, Mims, Guyton. How strongly are they really going to consider them at 24?
Well, if you look at who they've brought in, who they've tackled, who they've had interest in, you got guys like at least in terms of who they brought in, a lot of the guys they haven't. Rosengarten, Paul. Now Blake Fisher, that's a guy that I've heard Broadus and others talk about him. He might be, someone that they consider in that second, third round range. Same thing with Brandon Coleman. He's a guy from TCU, and he'll probably go in the top 100. And then you hear about, they might have been interested in Christian Jones. Who's the other guy? Concalves, the Pitt guy. Who else they had? Oh yeah, the Travis Glover. Is a guy from Georgia State. He'll be a late round person. They've dabbled with. You got I think it's in British Columbia or something. Giovanni Monty.
hmm,
Uh, yeah, they'll pick a guy late because a lot of the guys they looked at, there's all these small college guys, like a kid from Howard, kid from South Florida, basketball player. I mean, a lot of these guys they're looking at are really late, are either late or UDFA's. So either they get it done in the first 2 or 3 rounds, or they don't. That's what it looks like as far as tackle. I mean, at least from the visit thing. Now you look at guard. Yeah, guard's a different deal with them. They, you know, they're going to look at a guy that can do both, maybe a center guard. But in terms of who they've visited with, it's not a lot. Let's see. Fatanu, he's not going to be around. Barton, yeah, I don't think he's going to be around. And then that's pretty much it until you get later on. A couple guys like small, you know, small fry guys. I mean, their visit list has not been very deep with guard.
Yeah, that's why I'm so curious because they brought in the top two centers. A lot of the tackles they brought in, the 30 visits, are developmental types or maybe guys that go in the third. The pit guy that you mentioned. And it really makes me wonder, is that a true reflection of where their mind is at? Like they're prioritizing center in the first, and then they would like to bring in maybe a later round or a more developmental tackle. I mean, obviously, they drafted Tyler with the idea of him being the left tackle of the future. How well he played last year at left guard may change that. I don't know. But that's why I'm so curious. The main thing I'm wondering is what are they really thinking about when it comes to this like second tier of tackles in this draft who are expected to go in that 20-30 range. Mims, Guyton, Morgan, although I think Morgan's probably a better guard, but whatever.
I don't
Sumataya,
think Mims or Guyton are actually on the radar. If they didn't bring him in,
they may not be.
I mean, as far as the first, unless someone's going to fall down, they didn't think he was going to get there, chances are they're going to want to visit with him. And just, you had Mims had some small interest, but he wasn't brought in. You had, of course, Morgan. Morgan, I think, is the guy he's their fallback. He'll be the Tyler Smith type dude from this draft, probably. People are, but yeah, I mean, the BYU kid, it's another one. But the thing, the only other player that sticks out is Fisher, from Notre Dame. I mean, he could be. I don't think he can play left tackle, but he definitely could play right.
And that's another thing I find interesting. A lot of the guys they've been looking at tackle project to potentially, because Sumataya played right tackle up until this past year, he played left tackle. Makes me wonder how much in the back of their mind they're lining up a fallback plan if Steele
Well,
play like
Yeah,
doesn't
Steele's
good
work.
point.
contract, Steele's contract's out at the end of 20. I think they have an out
They can get out
at
after
the end
this
of
season.
25.
I,
Yeah,
if he plays like shit this season, 2024, going into 2025, they can cut him and they save money. I forget exactly how much it is. It's at least like 4 or 5, 6 million. You obviously could make it June 1st, probably save 10, 11 million, whatever it is. If Steele plays like crap this year, like he did last year, I think he's gone. And that's another thing I have in the back of my mind in terms of are they looking at guys who they think they could like try out at left tackle for a year, see how they do, see how Steele does. You have Tyler who could play left tackle if you need it a year from now, and then depending on how all this stuff shakes out, maybe in 2025, Steele is gone, Tyler is back at left tackle. Whoever we take this year, Sumatai, whatever, moves over to right tackle. Another interesting thing, I do think the simplest explanation being the most likely or whatever the saying is the fact that they brought in those top two centers, the fact that they brought the tackles that they've brought in are guys who more or less are going to be gone. Fatanu, Fuaga, we know they're going to be gone. If they drop, okay, they're going to take them, whatever. Aside from them, it's Sumatai, and I think that's basically it. So it makes me think they're probably prioritizing center. It's maybe a lot of this talk about Tyler. Right now he's the left guard. We'll see. Might be their like half-assed attempt at a smokescreen. Make people think they're gonna leave him at guard. They're gonna prioritize tackle, and it would make the most sense. You take a center, Tyler back to left tackle, Bass at his position at left guard that he playing last year. I mean, that's a pretty decent offensive line. Doesn't do anything about the defensive line being a joke, But if you told me our starting offensive line week one is Tyler, Bass, Powers Johnson, or Barton, Martin, Steele, I mean, it's a pretty damn good
Hmm.
offensive line, or at least it projects to be.
Well, yeah, the thing about Steele is the out doesn't come until 2026. 2025, he's going to have a base salary. I'm looking it up. He has a base salary of 13.2. He's going to end up having a dead cap amount of $9 million. So 26 is the year where they have the out, where they can basically get him out with a $6 million dead cap hit. That's the year. So they've married him for this coming year. So this, if they're taking a tackle, it's going to be a guy they're going to stick at left tackle and then switch out to right in 26. To me, the value is at center. It has to be. You can get a guard later on here and there, but the center to me has to happen. They can figure out the rest.
I agree. I mean, that's where my mind's at. Everything in the first round revolves around offensive line. Just it's just the corner they painted themselves into. So everything I've been thinking about since free agency has been it's all. I mean, that's going back to my first question, or when the very first thing I was asked about the draft, and the very first thing I said was, "Who are the players that are not offensive linemen that would are so good that I would pass up offensive line?" So all I've been thinking about is offensive line, and really the guys who will likely be there: Powers, Johnson, Barton are my top two. After that, we could talk about Mims, Guyton, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, the real interesting thing for me is, or a real interesting scenario is, what if Fuaga drops, or even a guy like Latham, whatever. The right tackles.
They won't take Latham.
I mean, I think
They won't take Latham. I can tell you this right now.
I agree with
I
that,
think
honestly.
Rosenhaus is his agent,
Mm,
and they have a thing about agents, and it goes back to the 90s. That's
yeah,
because they're cheap. There's certain agents they don't deal with. In fact, Prescott's agent is one of the more bloodthirsty agents in the league, and they're dealing with that right now. They're going through hell at that right now because they're used to it being easy. They still draft like it was the 90s again. They used to draft with signability in mind. Now they draft with how expensive is that player going to be down the road. And I honestly think they think in those terms. And it's scary to think about, but you look, there are certain players that we don't sign in free agency. We don't deal, their agents have a lot to do with it. And Dallas is not the destination of choice. So we have to be we that's the thing. That's why they rely on the draft so much. They're going to have to basically seize their own players because they can't recruit. Because
yeah.
there's really not a lot no reason to come to Dallas. You're
Well,
not coming to Dallas to win a championship because unless you're a moron, we haven't won one in a long time.
they don't recruit. They sit back and wait for the free agents to call them.
You know what it
And then
reminds
they
me of?
half-ass schedule a meeting, and then the free agent knows they're not serious about it and walks out. What was the guy? Chris Long did that to them just before he signed with the Eagles. They had Steven was sitting there holding the damn bag. I mean, they're inept in terms of overall, free agents to them is it's totally they can't figure that shit out. And honestly, I don't want them to try because then they'll fuck themselves up. But there's a lot of things they just don't, you know, pro personnel. I mean, just picking up a guy off of waivers in the middle of the season that helps your team. They don't do those kind of things because they're lazy and cheap and stupid. That's just not a way to run a franchise. And we see that all the time. And we're going to see it in this draft too. I can tell you this. We're going to get focused on our offensive line. Okay, that'll work. I mean, it'd be kind of hard not to screw up a pick in this draft with offensive line. It's so deep. But then they're going to do something that is off the rails, like Brooks in the second, and just totally blow it. Because if they can't, I mean, if I had faith they could move around in the draft and pick up picks, all that'd be great. You can figure it out, and you can trade down. You can do, I do it on the mock draft simulators all the time. You can trade down, and trade up, and get 12 picks, and you're good. But they're not going to be able to do that. They're not equipped to do that. So we're going to deal with maybe a trade down. Maybe they pick up that precious fourth that they gave up for Lance, and then
we're going to have 7 players out of this draft probably if we get lucky. So you plug them 7 players in, 3 of which will make it, 4 of which won't. And then, what do you do with the other? I mean, there's some depth holes all over the roster.
They remind me of a company that's kind of there are companies out there that just they're like hiring strategy and booze. I think you're like kind of involved in this stuff, so you could probably speak to this. But they seem like these companies that go out and just like almost in a predatory way bring in a bunch of young impressionable college grads, bring them into like their environment. They feel like they can mold them, make them the type like build the type of mindset in these young you know employees that they want them to have, as opposed to like being able to poach really capable, qualified people from like elsewhere because the internal culture of the organization is so kind of warped and it's built around these like odd incentives and the like the prestige of the Jones family and the brand and these things that you don't normally get or you don't have at the majority of NFL teams. You don't have that mindset, and having that mindset, I think that's one of the reasons they like it's really insular, and they want to bring in certain types of guys right out of college. They can like brainwash them almost on like the cowboy way and the glitz.
There is no cowboy way. That's the
You know
tragic
what I
part
mean?
about it.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
agree with
Yeah.
you. Everything you're saying is absolutely spot on. But I would get it if there actually was hey, back in Al Davis's day, you knew if you're going to be a Raider, you had to be basically a criminal. With the
And fast.
Cowboys, you could be a fuck up and be a Cowboy. You can be a complete fuck up and drunk drive, do whatever. I mean, they've been very good about avoiding that lately, but that's let's be honest. I mean, that's just kind of the whole culture that Jones has developed. You can't change it now. You can't say, "Oh, now there's a cowboy." There isn't. The cowboy way is the one that everybody laughs at, and it's still there. That's just what we do. We just try. We hide it. We've hit it a lot better in the last few years, but I don't think there's any type of smart brain working in the operation here. You have McClay's a little bit different that injects some things, but he's kind of a moron too because he picked Taco over Watt. So
Mm.
let's just call it how it is. I mean, we draft well. Well, guess what? Being arrogant isn't the same as they're not smart. They're just arrogant, like they always have been.
yeah, the arrogance comes from the insular nature. It's like if
Yeah,
you like if you never have new ideas, new like perspectives coming in, it's very easy to become very self assured in your like way of thinking because everybody is reinforcing this way of doing business, and so it's easy to see why they would like almost get brainwashed, and they wouldn't want outsiders coming in bring like these different ideas and the way things are done elsewhere because it rocks the boat, makes people uncomfortable. That's really what it comes down to. I mean, it's honestly a goddamn miracle that they have been as good as they've been over the last 10 years in terms of regular
Hmm.
season, winning 10, 11, 12 games, more often than not, having one of the better regular season records. But then in the playoffs, we see what happens. And I think that often goes back to like this strange culture, not prioritize. Like it's, I just think it is very difficult. I mean, this is another conversation from the stuff that we're talking about, but I just think the very weird way that this organization goes about its business, it manifests itself in a lot of different ways. I think one of those ways is what we see happen in the playoffs. One of those ways is what we see happening in free agency. Not bringing in, and not just aside from free agency, but like not like having people that stay in the organization for 20, 30 years. It reminds me, companies. Early in my career, someone told me if you go to an office and you see everybody in their cubes with pictures from like their kids when they were babies all the way up until they're in high school and all, like they like this person has been in this cube. I mean, yeah, obviously they could have just put it all up a year ago, but basically if you have people who have been sitting at this place for the last 20, 30 years, not going anywhere, sitting in the same cube for the last 2 decades, like do not stay there long. And I think that sort of culture is probably what exists with the Cowboys.
It does. I mean, you look at, I mean, they've tried to bring in all these analytics people lately. That's great and everything, but when you still got the waiter running the salary cap under Steven's direction, that's not going to matter. You know you're absolutely spot on with all the culture stuff. I mean, we could talk about that for hours. I mean, that's the truly maddening thing about being a fan of the team is that you have to really either be an idiot and accept it or get angry every time you see what they do and somehow they trip over their own dicks and seem semi-successful, and that makes the rappling morons say, "Oh yeah, we're good." I mean, it's a, they need to hit rock bottom. They need to honestly, have a 4-13, I guess it's 13 losses now, year. They need to truly just lose it, and they won't. And they didn't even do it with Garrett. I mean, they tap danced around 8-8, and one and done. We did it 3 years. We almost got the playoffs. Now getting into the playoffs is, see, that's a good thing. Once we get the playoffs, then it's a tournament, and then it's game on. And they don't care what happens after that. As long as they get to that playoff, they're good. And that mentality will never change until probably all of them die in a fiery plane crash, because it's going to pass down to Steven. It'll pass down to Charlotte if she takes over next. And then you got Spalding, Jerry
Uh,
Jones Jr.,
right. That the
whom
entitlement will only
else?
get worse.
What else?
Yeah.
I mean, what else is there? I mean, that's it's depressing.
Yeah, the only hope is that somewhere along the way, someone gets shamed into like prioritizing winning over everything else. Maybe after Stevens. I mean, I think.
Steven's death is what we got to hope for, because that's about it, man. I'm telling you,
I
you will
mean,
not. Steven has no shame. He's proven what a just a the guy. I mean,
Just a company man.
he's the mouthpiece now. You notice that, right?
yeah,
Jerry ain't saying shit, but you got Steven up there. You know, he's one of these very dumb rich people that was probably got something from his, he obviously got it from his father, handed him down, who honestly thinks he's smart. He really does. I bet he thinks he's really smart. I bet if you sit down in a conversation with him, he will try to establish that fact. And it's not even true. And that's the worst part. The guy has no humility at all. Even Jerry has charm. This guy has uh,
Yeah, well,
nothing.
and probably part of the reason that they're not letting Jerry talk anymore is the mix up he had. Was that at the Senior Bowl where he mentioned all in? Well, the question actually specifically asked him if he would be all in, which is probably why he said it.
Well,
But
All In was before the Super Bowl.
yeah, it
I
was,
mean,
it was like
sorry, the Senior Bowl.
not long after
yeah,
we
before the
lost. I
Senior
think.
Bowl, right?
Yeah, I mean the whole All In thing. I mean, you know, the All In, that's Jones being Jones. He's going to be a huckster. He's going to be a salesman. And he's going to try to sell it. Steven, of course, is on the other hand, is the guy that actually runs things. Comes out and goes, "Oh, wait a minute, no, can't do that." I mean, the whole dynamic is messed up right now, and it won't get changed until Steven has a very strong heart attack, which I hope is very soon.
Or it's time for a new stadium.
I
So
thought about that. When is that gonna? Because we're getting. I mean, the way stadium age now, you're
15
getting to that
years now.
point. Yeah. So maybe I don't know. McCarthy gets fired after this year, and then what are you gonna do? You got Belichick coming in. He can lead in the new stadium just like Parcells did. There you go. But I don't think the stadium thing. I think they're pretty much dug in there. I don't think there's any plans to get a new stadium. They've got enough coming in off of the Star and all the other thing, all the rest of the things they have in the complex. I don't think
Yeah,
they were worried about
it's
that.
just something of that magnitude that could
Yeah.
cause them to get up and make a change.
Well,
That's about it.
that's the thing. Yeah, you have to focus on the draft because that's all we got. And I start looking at it, and there's ways they could come out of here. if they come out with 3 or 4 starters, which is for any draft is, it's huge. You have to be fortunate as hell to get that happen. But
No doubt.
you know, that's that bad part. I mean, I'm always optimistic about the draft. There's always things that intrigue me about it, but I've never felt going into a draft that we were this desperate. In other words, at certain positions, and it was all self-inflicted. This is probably the one draft where I can honestly say, yeah, we better get 3 starters in the first 3 rounds.
Well,
Otherwise, we're kind of cooked.
exactly. I mean, if you look at all the free agents who actually left the team outside of Gallimore and Igbanagani, everybody else were pretty significant contributors on each side of
Yeah,
the ball.
either they were depth or they started. So I mean, that's not normal. A normal team would have probably got at least one free agent that could have started. You know, yes, Van Der Esch is gone, and then they got Kendricks, big deal. But they're they missed the boat being able to set themselves up for the draft. They always say it every year. Well, we don't want to go in there. Well, yeah, you're going to go in. There's a need this year. You're going to go in there with the need at 3 positions minimum. If you don't get a starter out of that, then yeah, it's going to be, you're going to struggle. And it's on both sides of the ball. It's not just one.
All right, guys. Sounds good.
All right, man.
Good to chat
It was
with
a lot of fun, man.
Likewise. Remember, do not exit until
That's
this
right.
guy gets the recording.
That's right.
Oh,
Leave
shit.
your browser open.